I think I need to clarify what I was talking about yesterday when somebody asked me about CrossFit and recommending CrossFit gym. And with the responses I got to that, obviously there's a bit of maybe not misunderstanding, but I need to clarify a few things. And when we look at CrossFit in the traditional sense of the word, where it's functional fitness, high intensity, constantly varied, as that definition that we look at, we need to kind of understand what our objectives are when we're looking at health. And this performance or athletic performance or being a well-rounded. But I want to tell you that people that are below zero in terms of fitness, that they haven't moved or they haven't done much in their life when it comes to fitness, or then going from -1 to a 0 is going to yield a result. And it doesn't have to be CrossFit. CrossFit isn't magic, but it could be somebody that's never moved, been sitting on the couch most of their life, and then they decide to start doing Zumba, and they're going to see, or if they start walking more consistently, they're going to see improvements in their life. Now, why did I say that I don't recommend it for health and wellness? The first reason is the sustainability. And how sustainable is this? I did it for about 10 or 11 years. And over time, it becomes very daunting when you have to think of a workout the next day that's going to be pushing your limits every single day. And it wears you down mentally as well as physically, that you're pounding the body and that you're doing loads and loads of reps over and over again, and your heart rate is elevated. It's just so stressful to kind of think tomorrow you're going to do this. It's great when you're younger. It's great when you have that energy, or if you don't have kids, you don't have responsibilities for most of the time. But after a while, it becomes start to stop doing as much as that. So it's not sustainable. And when you look at most CrossFit gyms, CrossFit boxes, and I say this, and I have a video that's quite longer about why I hate CrossFit. The coaching part of it is usually subpar, and what I mean by that is, obviously I'm generalizing, so people that want to get offended and sit there and say that not all coaches are the same, I agree with you, but the majority of them, unfortunately, are underqualified when it comes to teaching complex movements. So when we look, or when we break down CrossFit, you're looking at gymnastic movements, that you're looking at Olympic lifting, so the snatches and the cleans and that, which you're looking at plyometrics, as well as weight training and powerlifting, and thrown in there the accessory stuff that a coach that is supposed to be able to coach that has to be a very high majority of them do a 2-day course, get their level 1, and they start coaching where the problems start to happen. So you find the injuries start to happen because they're unable to see or foresee the problems that people will face. The other issue that I have with CrossFit, and this is why I'm saying it's not for that, a lot of the movements you start to, so once you're done the strength part of it, and then you go into the workout, and let's say you pair deadlift with box jumps, you're using the backside of your body, your hamstrings, your glutes, and your lower. You're doing that at a fast pace because you're supposed to get as many rounds as you can. And the muscle, once we push that limit, once we're getting to our maximum effort, that's where injuries start to jump in to happen. And most people aren't able to regulate that part where he's excited and then pushing. And eventually some type of injury happens. And when we're looking at health and wellness, any injury that happens, because your recovery becomes a lot slower from that, and the chances of you, especially if it's a serious injury, becomes less and less over time. So once you hit your 50s and 60s, if you do get injured, the risk of you coming back becomes a lot lower. And that defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. The other part of it is the other issue I have with it, and why I'm saying it's probably not for longevity. It's unclear what is being. So you have one portion, usually, I'm generalizing here, but if you look at CrossFit.com, you'll see the programming there, that you have the portion in the beginning, which is the strength. So let's say you do a 5x5 strict press, and then you go into the Metcon with whatever that is. And if we want to look at what builds your health over time, the capacity and avoiding diseases and issues later on, it's building as much muscle mass as you can. And that comes through proper strength training, the different elements of it, whether it's absolute strength, strength endurance. Those elements are important, but your rep ranges are nothing beyond 20 reps, let's say. The other part is the cardio or the aerobic part of it, where you're doing slow, steady state cardio, or you're doing a controlled, where it has to be controlled, zone 5 type high intensity intervals on that. Now, the argument will come back and say, well, you can still do that with CrossFit. The problem is it's not first of all, measurable or easy to sustain a high intensity for the period that you need to sustain a result. And it's very difficult to do that with a varying group of people from beginners to advanced. So an advanced person, you could probably throw in there some power cleans and some box jump and kind of do those intervals. But with a beginner, you can do the same thing. For them to lift a heavy weight with a clean, for example, or learn how to do a box jump properly without hurting themselves, become problematic because the stimulus becomes very different for both of them. So if I was to, again, try to explain this to people, why I don't think it's for health and wellness, it's for those reasons that it's not a sustainable workout regime that people can do at a high intensity all the time. It does wear you down, and people that are above 40 will attest to that. And most people I know that have gone into that have drastically shifted their workout. And if they do CrossFit type workouts, it's once in a while and not as much as they did before. The other part of it is the programming is general and it's not specific to our goals of building muscle mass and building aerobic capacity or improving your aerobic ability. The third part that I said as well is that you're doing a lot, and this is problematic, and this is where injuries happen. And when we look at injuries, we need to avoid injuries or minimize the risk of injuries. I'm not saying weight training you won't, but the chances of that happening are a lot lower, especially if you do it properly. The coaching standards as well. And again, I'm generalizing, I'm not being certain coaches, but in general, the coaching standards are a lot lower than specialized coaches that are, whether it's kind of strength and conditioning or whether it's a powerlifting coach. These are specialists in those. They only train people that want to do that. So when you get somebody 10, 15, 20 people sometimes, a lot of people fall through the cracks. And the risk of injury or doing things incorrectly or getting the wrong stimulus. That clarifies. If something isn't clear about why I don't think it's for health and wellness, don't get me wrong, I'm not against CrossFit and I believe in the methodology. However, I'm looking at health, sustainability. I'm looking at something that will deter diseases and issues later on in your life. And the right way to do it is the shortest way between here and where we want to be. And the best way to do that is to do a whole bunch of properly structured, the simplest of lifts, of deadlifts. To that, some aerobic work, slow sustained work, as well as high intensity work as well. And that